All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BETONLINE. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am excited to talk about Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets and a game tonight that will be a very interesting test for both teams, the Denver Nuggets and the New York Knicks. We're going to talk about it all. We're going to have a lot of fun. I'm very excited to be a part of it. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Really appreciate all the love and support on the podcast. Of course, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really appreciate it. Cedric is here. Good morning, Cedric. Mr. Exquisite Nuggets says, sup fam. Martin Hodel says, congrats to Coach Malone. Congrats to Coach Malone. I did a show last night with Matt Moore over at Locked On Nuggets, and we had a great time, and we led off that show with just some extended conversation about Michael Malone and what he means to the Nuggets, what he means to the organization, and just where things have sort of evolved. Been awesome to watch him, and just been very happy to see his success and him get the credit that he absolutely deserves. So make sure to go check that out as well. But for now, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really appreciate it. Really quickly, this podcast, as you know, it's brought to you by the good folks over at BetOnline, your number one source for everything sports betting and entertainment betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, whether it's football, NBA, NHL, or more. Head on over to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Once again, I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Let's get into the topic at hand, which is Nikola Jokic, who is doing some crazy, wild stuff. It feels like I record this podcast every week, or at least lead off this podcast every week with, hey, what is the new thing that Nikola Jokic is dominating the NBA with? Well, right now, it's everything. He has every aspect of his game working right now. Everything that he touches turns to gold. It feels like what he's doing on a consistent basis is working, and it's been a lot of fun. It's saved Denver in a situation where he had to be great. He has been great, and then some. Jokic, obviously, I could list off all of the numbers that I want to. The most important ones that you need to know are the pace that he's at right now: 30.3 points, 13.9 rebounds. He's leading the NBA in rebounding. He's currently second in assists per game at 11.3. The only reason he's not ahead of Trae Young is that Trae Young, he had one game where he had like 19 assists and was really doing his darndest to try to get that title. Trae Young's at 11.7. Jokic is technically, I guess, 11.2, but 11.3 is pretty close. Been a lot of fun. Been a lot of fun to watch Jokic and what he's been able to do. Oh, and in steals per game, he's also basically tied with like Steph Curry, Brandon Miller, OG Anunoby, guys like that at 1.6 per game. Very close to the top 10 in that regard. Not quite there, but he's very close. What he has done through the first 12 games of his season is unbelievable. Nobody in NBA history outside of him in the playoffs in 2023 has had a span where they've had 360 points, 160 rebounds, 130 assists. It's unbelievable. And the all-encompassing impact that you have come to witness, that you have really come to expect from Jokic is still there. What you didn't expect, or at least I hope you didn't expect this, Jokic is shooting 56.3% from three on 4 attempts per game, which is not quite leading the NBA in three-point percentage, but it's as close as you could possibly get. If I go to it, Josh Green is currently 56.4. Jokic is just behind him. So like percentage points by very small gap. It's been unbelievable. It's been unbelievable to watch him, understanding that what he has done has never been done before. And it's every possible combination of things that he has done has never been done before. Just really cool to see him take this moment seriously, despite the fact that he and his family have a child on the way. Now, baby is born, baby boy. And he has still found a way to be as successful as you could possibly ask for. Uh, I tend to grade him on a scale because we've come to expect greatness from Jokic. We've come to expect dominance. And every once in a while, I catch myself thinking, oh, wow, Jokic didn't make the right play there. Jokic didn't make the right decision. Jokic, there was a defensive play that he didn't make, or he was a little bit low effort on an offensive rebound or something like that. And I have to keep catching myself because you would never say that about any other player, right? Like any other player that has this level of burden, that has this level of expectation on themselves, if one of the details fell through the cracks, then you'd be like, okay, it's fine. Look at the rest of what you're doing. With Jokic, it's different. And the reason why it's different is because he has become so good at achieving such a holistic and well-rounded profile for dominance in the NBA that he's perfecting his game. He's perfecting everything. Anytime he has something that is not perfect, you wonder, hey, what's going on? Here's a good example of that. Jokic so far this season is not shooting well from inside of 3 feet. He's shooting 63.6%, which if you go by his career, 63.6% within 0 to 3 feet is extremely low. Last year, he shot 74.1. The year before that, 78.4, 77.6, 75.3, 72.4. The last time he shot this low from 0 to 3 feet was his rookie season, which to me says that there's an even higher place that he can get to. Now, to be fair, he's never shot this well from three-point range. He's never shot 40% from three in his NBA career. He's been at max 39.6%. So am I expecting him to maintain 56% from three for the rest of his career? No. And I'm not even expecting him to do it for the next 5 games. Like, he'll probably come back down to earth in that regard. But while he doesn't, while he's doing everything, you just got to appreciate it. You got to appreciate what we're seeing. The overall level of impact that he is providing on a consistent basis has been unbelievable. And it's hard to even fathom whether we'll see anything like this ever again. Like, you could pick any combination of numbers and he's probably leading. Any single one. The play-by-play data is crazy. He's obviously the plus minus with him on the court is wild. The overall number of assists, like the actual advanced metrics that he's leading in is crazy. 33.2 PER. He's never had it that high before. He was close in 2021-22, but he's actually been better so far this year. He's up to a 67% true shooting, which is actually lower than 2022-23 when he was at 70. Just that was a crazy year from an efficiency standpoint. And I think that they could get back to that. If he shoots better from 0 to 3 feet, then that will really take him into a different stratosphere in terms of his shooting. He is mostly dominant in every single place on the floor. He has been taking so much attention away from other players on the floor, and it's allowed other guys to continue to flourish. Michael Porter Jr. is continuing to do his thing. Russell Westbrook's now firmly getting entrenched. We're going to talk about those guys in the second segment. But the way that Jokic, and I mentioned this on the other show as well, the way that Jokic has done this has allowed him to be the best version of himself and allowed other people to find ways to be the best version of themselves too. I've been very impressed with the way that he has sort of assumed that responsibility. Rather than putting the burden on other people, he has assumed the entire burden himself. And it gives others, specifically Jamal Murray, but also Michael Porter, Russell Westbrook, anybody that is still trying to figure out exactly where they fit into the pecking order here, it's allowed those guys to really hone in on where exactly they have to shine in order to be the best version of themselves, in order to be the best version for this team. Peyton Watson figured stuff out, and one of the main reasons is Jokic trusts him. Christian Brown, same thing. Jokic has immediately gone to doing what he's needed to do in order to help Christian be the best version of himself. And Christian's held up his end of the bargain on that front, to be clear. Question here from Shut Up and Take My Money. If Jokic gets fourth MVP and a finals MVP, if we make it, Ryan, where does this rank Jokic? I actually mentioned this yesterday that if Denver were to get a title, it doesn't even matter about the fourth MVP. If they were to get another title, he's automatically vaulting into the top 10. The top 10. Think about it this way. Kevin Durant has 2 championships. He won them both with an all-time great team in Golden State, and he is on the borderline of top 10 for a lot of folks. Steph Curry, Kobe Bryant, those guys have more championships. Larry Bird, he's got 3. He's got 3 MVPs as well. If Jokic gets a fourth MVP and a finals MVP this year, with the current level of statistical dominance that he has, he's going to jump some people. And lots of folks are going to be unhappy with where he ultimately finishes in that conversation. But I would have to go through the actual rankings for myself. I think I had Kobe 9th all time and Tim Duncan like 7th or 8th. I think you're getting into that tier. You're getting into the 8 to 12 tier for Jokic. Like he vaults over Hakeem Olajuwon. He vaults over probably Wilt Chamberlain, if I'm being honest. He puts himself over certainly Kevin Durant at that point. And then you could probably argue Steph Curry. It just depends on what you value and what you mostly care about. So Oscar Robertson's another name that's going to show up in there, but there's a lot of names that I could throw out. There's a lot of names that I could push out there. And if Jokic gets those this year, then like he's got the foundation for a case for top 5 of all time. He just has to play for another 6, 7, 8 years for that statistical dominance to really show up. And then hopefully he gets another ring at that point. But look, it's why there's so much pressure on the Nuggets right now. Because Jokic is playing at this level. He's controlling the entire NBA, as I put together the title and the thumbnail for this podcast, which I thought was pretty good. Jokic is doing crazy stuff. And it's up to Denver now, that responsibility. It's up to Denver to deliver on the idea that Jokic can be a part of something great. So we'll see what happens. But tell you what, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Russell Westbrook. We're going to talk about Michael Porter Jr. and how they have stepped up while Jamal Murray especially has really, really struggled. We will be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we're back here, Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I'm on my second cup of coffee. I'm so tired right now that I forgot that I had already put in sugar in my coffee, and I put in a second helping of it. And it is as sweet as it gets. I've been on keto over the last few weeks, or last 7, 8 weeks or so. It's a sugar overload right now, so I'm doing my best. But guys, thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you're looking for a preview for tonight's game, listen to the third segment of the show. But also, if you want it from the Knicks perspective, I was just on Knicks Film School this morning, recording a podcast with Andrew Claudio over there. Knicks Film School is a great Knicks platform. They've got a lot of different things, but they've got a YouTube channel that posts a lot of content. So I was just on there this morning. Make sure to check it out, Knicks Film School. All right. Russell Westbrook and Michael Porter Jr. Russell Westbrook had a great game on Saturday. I haven't really talked about the game on Saturday that much. That was a big game for a lot of people. Jokic, MPJ, Russell Westbrook especially. Those guys have been unbelievable. And we'll talk about Michael Porter in just a bit, but Jokic dominated Anthony Davis. That was tremendous. It was unbelievable to watch. Actually, no, that's not true. It was very believable to watch. I've watched the playoffs and I've watched the regular season in the past couple of years. What I haven't seen is Russell Westbrook impact the game in that holistic of a way, despite the fact that like LeBron James was guarding him. He was clearly like he had a game plan for how he was going to handle it. The second quarter was what it was. Russ struggled at that point. Dario Saric really struggled at that point. There are some things that they're going to have to figure out. But what Russell Westbrook showed in this last game was how much he cared and what he could do when put into a position to succeed. The Nuggets have trusted Russell Westbrook greatly. And I want to really hone in on that. They have empowered Russell Westbrook to be the best version of himself that he can be. And that has really done a number for this Nuggets team. 14 points, 7 rebounds, 11 assists for Russ in 24 minutes. He was a plus 17 in that time. Obviously, Jokic was a plus 39. Everybody was going to get in on the plus minus with the way the Jokic was playing. But I want to hone in on Russ and just the way that Denver continues to trust him. It was really standing out to me in the Mavericks game and then in this one that a lot of teams are not going to guard Russ. He's historically not a good shooter, and he can make bad decisions. He can make really good decisions. He can impact your team in a positive way. But there are times, especially when facing really good teams in really tough situations, where Russ can make a bad decision. It could change the momentum of a game. It could really impact stuff. And yet, Russ this year has shot the ball reasonably well, and the Nuggets have consistently passed him the ball in those situations and said, shoot it. We want you to shoot. We want you to take the shot. You have to take the shot. It is a requirement, and we believe in you. And it's not always going to work. Like, Russ has a history of shooting about 28 to 32% from three. It's probably not going to be great. Like, he's shooting 36% right now. It's been really good. That's going to come down at some points. There are going to be games where he shoots 1 of 4, like he did in this last Lakers game. But he also has a way to impact the game in a variety of different ways. And I've noticed this. Denver has given him the keys a lot of the time on that second unit, and it hasn't always worked out. If we're talking like just strictly, did you win your minutes? The answer with Russ without Jokic has been no. They haven't won their minutes. And they're going to have to figure out how and why and what's going on and what they need to change in order to make that happen. I tend to think it's mostly a backup center conversation, and Murray's actually been okay without Joker so far, but Michael Porter so far hasn't really been able to impact the game that much without Jokic. So I'm curious to see what Denver's going to ultimately do. But when Russ is out there, he has the keys, and the Nuggets have been more than willing to give them to him. And it's been, I think, a positive experience overall. There have been some negative moments, and I don't want to take away from the idea that he could fail going forward. But in terms of being a minimum salary for a team, playing a role and coming in and showing what you can do, Russ has been a positive for Denver. He's changed the mentality in a lot of ways. They've stayed aggressive. They have really done great things. He has set the table a lot for other people. He's averaging over 6 assists per game, despite the fact that he's come off the bench for the vast majority of the time. So I've just been really impressed with the playmaking. It's one thing where I look at last year with the Clippers for him. They traded for James Harden, I think, after like 4 or 5 games, whatever the number was. And I immediately thought, like, man, Russ was starting off the season pretty well for you. What are you doing? Like, why do you need James Harden? And the thing is, they didn't need James Harden last year while Russell Westbrook was on the team, while Paul George was on the team, while Kawhi Leonard was on the team. Now the Clippers need James Harden, but they need somebody to control the ball. But last year, they really marginalized what Russell Westbrook was supposed to be from a role standpoint, and they didn't surround him with the right pieces. The Nuggets have a better mix of talent around Russell Westbrook, and they also have an all-time great center. So when you are playing in that situation, it's gonna make a lot more sense. I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Russ, and he just continues to grow on this Nuggets roster. Does that mean he's going to play a big role in the playoffs? No, it doesn't mean that. He might, but I'm still trying to parse that, and like with what he has done previously in the playoff matchups versus what he's going to do now. I think there are things that teams are going to be able to scheme against with him. When they take away certain things, it's going to be difficult. But in the moment right now, he has been very good, and I've been really impressed. Next, Michael Porter Jr., and then we'll take another break after that. Michael Porter Jr. has been really, really good too. Like, you just look at the Nuggets and where they've been so far. Per game, Michael Porter's now the second leading scorer on the team. 30.3 points for Jokic, 18.6 for Michael Porter. Obviously, those are drastically different. Jamal Murray's down to 17.6 points per game. His usage rate is still higher than Michael Porter. He's taking one more shot than Michael Porter and averaging one fewer point than Michael Porter. That is not good. If Murray was averaging like the regular efficiency that he has throughout his career, Murray would be at about 20, I want to say. But Michael Porter right now is 18.6 points, 7.1 rebounds, 3.0 assists. That's a great number. That is a really great sign for Denver. Mike is like, doesn't have this massively high usage. Nor does Murray, by the way. I will say like 22.7% usage for Murray isn't that crazy. They've really played through Jokic a lot more this season in general, rather than going to the two-man game as much. But Porter, like, he's still in a really good place, 60% true shooting. Can he handle a higher usage? Can he handle an opportunity to be the second option? Is that something that the Nuggets can do with Porter while Murray is still on the roster? I don't really know. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I'm still very interested to see like what it looks like and whether Denver can get to that place. Like, do they have the personnel? Do they have the mental makeup to make Michael Porter the second option on the team? There are times where he will transition into that. I think it's going to be like, that's going to have to be a change of heart kind of thing. And if it evolves that way, then great. Maybe Murray just kind of gets back to where he was previously and Denver's still okay running most of the same stuff that they've run. Porter can be the second and a half option, the third option, somewhere around there. But I've just been really impressed with the way that Mike has handled his stuff. 3.0 assists per game has been awesome. And like, I know that doesn't sound like a lot to a lot of people, but I want to hammer this home. Michael Porter in his career has averaged 1.3 assists per game in 283 games. Through 15 games so far, he's at 3.0. That's more than double what his career average is. And the consistency with which he's finding other people, making other people better, that's what helps you get the trust of the team when you're making decisions on a more consistent basis. Previous years, the ball kind of stopped when Michael Porter got the ball. Most of the time, he's still going to fire it up if he's open. But now, the way his game has become more versatile, it has allowed the Nuggets to trust him a little bit more. And I've been very impressed with how the Nuggets have handled themselves in that regard. We'll see what ultimately it looks like with him, because it's still just 15 games. Like there's a lot of time for this to, there's a lot of time for this to change. But I do think that the way that he's starting, he's clearly been like, I don't know, second best player on the team or not, because Christian Brown is also existing. Christian Brown's been great for the Nuggets so far this year. I don't necessarily know how to parse that, but like certainly the best second option on the team. Jokic is the first, second, and third option most times, but Porter right behind him, he has been tremendous. And the consistency is a very important thing. Just let me list off the points for you from a Nuggets perspective. 15 in the first game. He shot 5 of 17. He had 9 points in the second game. After that, 13, 16, 26, 20, 19, 24, 21, 17, 24, 10 against Memphis. That was without Jokic. 24, 17, 24. Like the consistency has been really, really good. He's had double-digit points in 14 of the 15 games so far this year. And just in general, when he gets at least 15 shots per game, he's in 20 plus in all of them except for 2. Except for the first game of the season against OKC and against Toronto when he had 19. So when he gets the opportunity, he's generally been pretty good. And I've just been very impressed with how he's handled himself. It's been great. All right. Let's take another break. When we come back, we're going to break down Denver, New York really, really quickly. Been a lot of fun, and I'm very curious to see how Denver handles this New York matchup, because New York, they haven't been perfect so far this year, but they are a very dangerous team for the Nuggets. We'll be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. Final segment, Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. Dayon is here. He says AG is for me second best for a long time, like mid 2022 season, basically. I think that's fair, and I understand why. Denver, the way that they've built their roster, Murray, Porter, or Gordon could be the second best player on any given night. That's the talent that they have. It's the reason why they traded for Gordon in the first place. He is like, from a talent perspective, Gordon was always going to be talented enough to be your second best player, but he was going to be the fourth option, the fifth option. And that's what made him such a great fit for Denver from an impact standpoint. Like, you have some guy that's really talented. Michael Porter, we all knew he could be a first or second scoring option for a team at the peak of his career if he went somewhere else. But he bought in and has been the third or fourth option for Denver on a consistent basis. And I think that that's been really great. Murray, like, I think injuries if they didn't hit him, if he was in a different situation, he'd probably be averaging like 25-6, 25-7 right now for a team. How efficient it would be, what the impact it would be, I don't know. But Denver's always been like, the numbers of those other guys are a little bit depressed because of the way that Denver plays. That's not Jokic's fault. Jokic makes everybody better. He makes everybody look better in the moments that they do have. So, but if those other guys had a chance to develop without him, like we saw what Aaron Gordon could do in other situations, if he was in a more functional environment than Orlando, it'd be a little bit different. So I think it's fair. I think between any of those three, you could call them the second best player, and I wouldn't argue with you at this point. I would have argued with you last year because I would have been like Murray, Murray, Murray. Now we gotta have a little bit more of an open mind here on Pickaxe and Roll. Okay. Nuggets Knicks tonight is going to be an interesting one. I wonder, first of all, Karl-Anthony Towns is questionable. That's the big key here. Deuce McBride is also questionable for the Knicks. Deuce McBride has been their sixth man. Karl-Anthony Towns has been tremendous this year, especially offensively. They are a really, really, really good team when they play their guys. It's not always perfect, but I do think that in general, Karl-Anthony Towns is an elite pairing with Jalen Brunson because of how much attention Jalen Brunson takes. Karl-Anthony Towns, if you leave him open, he's going to shoot, he's going to make it. And those guys are both averaging 25 points per game. They're also staggering. So, like, Cat is staggering with the second unit a lot of the time. He's carrying a pretty heavy burden. But they're also staggering and playing their starters a whole heck of a lot. If you go to the minutes for each of those guys, the Knicks, their starting lineup, like, I know everybody's worried about the Nuggets. Mikal Bridges is averaging the most minutes per game in the NBA this year. It's 38.3. I think Jokic is at 38.2. So a little minor difference there. Josh Hart's at 37.4. OG Anunoby's at 36.3. Jalen Brunson's at 34.5. Karl-Anthony Towns is at 33.4. So, like, their role players are playing a heavy burden right now between Bridges, Hart, and Anunoby. Brunson and Towns are actually, they're a little bit less, but they're still averaging 25 a night because when the pecking orders, when those guys are out there, they're the first option, other than when they're out there together, in which case it doesn't really matter who scores, but they're going to generate a good shot. So it's interesting. It's interesting to evaluate this team. They are second in the NBA in offensive rating right now behind the 17-1 Cleveland Cavaliers. That's a really, really impressive mark. They are 21st in defense the last time I checked. So not necessarily a good defense. And Denver will be able to score against them if they get into that matchup tonight. Towns has done a good job against Jokic in the past. He had Rudy Gobert as his backline defender in a lot of those matchups, and he had Jaden McDaniels as a perimeter stopper, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Anthony Edwards in the playoffs last year. With, like, New York, in theory, OG Anunoby, could he be like a Rudy Gobert roamer? Yeah, some ways. Mikal Bridges, could he be like a Jaden McDaniels? Yeah. Josh Hart, is he a high-energy physical defender, kind of like an Anthony Edwards? Yeah, the theory is there. But those guys carry such a heavy minutes burden and an offensive burden in general that it's really hard for them to do exactly what Gobert, the defensive player of the year, was doing. Mikal Bridges, an all defensive kind of guy, was doing. So this New York team is going to be very interesting. And I still think that they're a championship contender. I still think like they're going to get back when Deuce McBride plays. He's very good. When Mitchell Robinson comes back from injury, he's going to be really helpful. They probably need to trade for one more player in between point guard and center, but they've got Precious Achiuwa. They've got a couple of other guys that they could mix in. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch them throughout the season. As for tonight, Jamal's probably got to get going in a little bit. Like, I don't know who's going to guard him between Bridges and Anunoby, but one of those two is going to guard Porter. One of those two is going to guard Murray. Maybe Josh Hart also guards Murray a little bit. Brunson's not going to. I very much doubt it. But if Denver gets into a situation where they have Brunson and Towns as the defensive matchups for Murray and Jokic, Denver's got to get a good shot every time. They don't have to score every time, but they've got to get a good shot. They have to generate good offense, and I think that they will. Anunoby's going to be matched up with Porter for most of the time, I'd have to imagine. So that's going to be, like on both ends of the floor, a big deal. They both basically average about the same numbers. Anunoby's at about 18 per game on 40% from three. Michael Porter, 18.6 per game on 40.6% from three. Now, it's a little bit different. The types of shots that he is getting, a little bit different from the types of shots that Anunoby's getting. But numbers are about the same. So how can Michael Porter continue to elevate? Is he going to be taking a bunch more shots in this matchup? What is it going to look like? I'm curious. Can Russell Westbrook change the energy off the bench? Can he guard Jalen Brunson a little bit? Christian Brown, can he guard Jalen Brunson a little bit? Or are they going to switch Peyton Watson onto Jalen Brunson in this matchup like they did for Kyrie Irving? That's a question that I have. I'm going to go ahead and predict that if Towns plays, he's going to get 35 to 40 points. That's my prediction here. Because what the Nuggets are going to do in this matchup is they're going to hedge. They're going to have Jokic at the level. They're going to blitz Brunson. They're going to try to get the ball out of his hands. And the pressure release in that case is Karl-Anthony Towns. What is he going to do? Well, he could pick and pop for three, or he's going to roll down Main Street and make some plays, and Denver's probably not going to be in great defensive position. Michael Porter's going to give up an and one. Peyton Watson's going to give up an and one. He might block him at some points, but he's also going to force a shot. He's going to force a miss, and then Towns is going to get the offensive rebound because he's 7 foot and really big. So I think for Denver, they have to realize they're not going to get a lot of defensive stops in this game if Brunson and Towns are on their level, if Brunson and Towns are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So the Nuggets are going to have to score 120 points, 125, which means they got to get out in transition. They got to force turnovers. They got to run, and they have to be efficient on the offensive end. Can Jokic do that? Absolutely. Can Michael Porter do that? Absolutely. Murray's got to move. Murray's got to run. He'll get some opportunities, especially in transition. Can he hit those shots? Can he hit those threes? It's a big deal. Christian Brown's going to get some opportunities. He's going to, usually what he does is he'll finish in transition over a lot of these guys, but against Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and some of the defensive wings that they have, it's going to be difficult. So can he finish through that contact? We'll see. I don't know if I feel great about this one from Denver's perspective. I think that they'll find a way, but how they ultimately match up with the Knicks, I don't think is very good. But we've seen Jokic find ways before. We've seen him find ways and figure out how to impact things. Julian Strawther, a key matchup for Denver tonight. I would expect Julian Strawther to get a bunch of threes up tonight. That would be my prediction. I think that what the Knicks have and the mix of guys that they have, they're going to be sending a lot of help at Jokic. So if there's going to be a lot of help at Jokic, then I believe that they're going to find their ways to the three-point line. And Julian Strawther, missing tooth and all. I hope he got some dentistry work after losing that tooth against the Knicks or against the Lakers. I think that there's going to be a lot of shots for him. I'm going to go ahead and that's my hot take. 20-point night for Julian Strawther. I'll say the Nuggets win, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting. J.K. Walrus says, what's your bench lineup tonight, Ryan? Can you go with Dario Saric? Probably not. Who does Denver go with on their second unit to match up with Towns? It's probably not DeAndre Jordan, though their minutes with DeAndre have been really good. I just don't think that DeAndre can guard Towns. So maybe it's a Zeke Naji night. Maybe it's Zeke and Denver goes with like Russell Westbrook, Julian Strawther. They've been staggering Christian Brown and Michael Porter. So maybe it's Russ, Julian, Christian, Michael Porter, Zeke Naji. I could see that working. Trey Alexander's been getting some good minutes, so hopefully he could play out there. That would be great. He got a 3-up in this last game against the Lakers. Hopefully he could do that. But I'm curious to see what happens. I'm hopeful that the Nuggets at this point can match up a little bit. And if they can slow down Towns in any way, or if Jokic gets him into foul trouble, that would be a great way to do it as well. So we will see what happens. But for now, folks, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll. Really appreciate everybody for hopping in. We had a bumping chat today. Very excited to get this going. Denver plays at 7 p.m. tonight against the New York Knicks. Let me know what your score predictions are down below, who you think is going to have a good game, and also why Nikola Jokic is the overlord of the NBA. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I will talk to you guys very soon.